Hello and welcome to episode 103 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, my good friend and Instagram influencer, the Sarah Enigma, will be joining us to talk about how she deals with her gap in between Walt Disney World vacations. Sarah suffers from chronic illness and hasn't been able to visit her favorite theme parks since before the pandemic, but she always tries to keep a positive mindset when dealing with disappointment. Many of us on the podcast either deal with significant health issues or have spouses or relatives with difficult health concerns. We know that managing the parks can be different for everybody, and we really want to share those experiences. Before I welcome Sarah, my wife Courtney will be here to discuss the opening day of Epcot's International Festival of the Arts and share her 5 favorite food items. I also wanted to take a little time to look at some theme park news at Walt Disney World. The Disney Skyliner will be going down for a scheduled refurbishment starting this Sunday and lasting through the 29th. Anybody looking to park hop between Epcot and Disney's Hollywood Studios will need to rely on the bus system, friendship boats, or the walkway trail between the two parks. The Disney Skyliner also services the Yacht and Beach Club, Boardwalk Resort, Caribbean Beach Resort, Riviera Resort, Pop Century, and Art of Animation. Sunday is also going to be the final day of operation for Splash Mountain at Magic Kingdom on Monday. The re-theme to Tiana's Bayou Adventure will begin in earnest. As for Universal, they had some huge news last week announcing a brand new theme park in Texas geared towards families with children and a year-round Halloween Horror Nights experience in Las Vegas. We will definitely talk about those 2 announcements more in the near future. Here's my wife, Courtney, to talk about Epcot's International Festival of the Arts. Thanks for being here, Courtney.
Thanks, Rick.
You can catch my opinions of so many food items by checking out vlogs on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. I aired vlogs this past Sunday, January 15th, and Monday, January 16th. There will also be a 3rd vlog coming up tomorrow, January 20th. Make sure to subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel to see all of that content. Right now, I just wanted to give Courtney a chance to talk about some of the items she really liked at the festival.
So here are some items that I tried from the International Festival of the Arts this year. They didn't make my top 5, but everything was still really good, and I really don't have anything to complain about. First, we have the rainbow cake at Figment's Inspiration Station at the Odyssey. The rainbow cake has freeze-dried Skittles, and it was not overly sweet. I liked this. Then at the new Moderne booth, pan-seared scallops with vanilla butternut squash puree, brown butter cauliflower puree, and lime foam. I was excited about this, but it ended up being a little lackluster and bland, and there was only 1 scallop, even though it was well cooked. And just to mention a beverage, a non-alcoholic beverage, at the Tangerine Cafe, Flavors of the Medina, the Chai Tea Mint Sparkler with Twinings Chai Tea and Sprite. This was refreshing without being too sweet. Now, my top 5 things, which when I thought about, these stood out the most to me. So the France booth, which is hard to pronounce since I'm not fluent in French, L'Art de la Cuisine Françoise, was the Milieu à Noisette et Chocolat Valrhona. This was a molten chocolate and hazelnut cake with small dabs of passion fruit mango sauce. This was the perfect sweetness. It was warm, and I liked a little bit of the hint of the fruit flavor. Then the very popular Vibrante y Vivido Encanto Cocina, the passion fruit mousse with dragon fruit jam. This was the perfect texture. It wasn't too sweet, not overpowering, and inside the dragon fruit jam was a very gummy, kind of hard center, and I liked that. Then going back to the Moderne booth, the Tropics. This was almost a deconstructed dessert. It looked beautiful. Again, we have a lot of tropical flavors, a lilikoi mousse, guava cake, coconut crémeux, compressed pineapple, and a mango gel. It was fruity, unique, and fun. I just loved everything about it. Number 2 for me, At the Pastoral Palate. This is near Germany. The red wine braised beef short rib with parsnip puree and aged balsamic with some broccolini and little tomatoes. The beef was falling apart. It was so tender. It was just made perfectly. And it went so well with the balsamic sauce. Then you got a little bit of sweetness and creaminess from the parsnip puree. I absolutely loved this. And number 1 on my list, which I know Rick enjoyed this a lot as well, we split this, was from Gourmet Landscapes in the Canada area, the Wild Mushroom Risotto. This has a Zinfandel reduction, and it made it almost gravy-like. The risotto was very, very cheesy, very warm, and it was just packed with flavor. So I couldn't get enough of this. We kind of fought over who was going to finish it because it was that good.
There are 2 people I want to mention in regards to Epcot's International Festival of the Arts. One is Julia Schieser. She performed at the Germany Pavilion on that opening night, and she is actually the German singing voice of Belle in the live-action Beauty and the Beast and Jasmine in the live-action version of Aladdin. So if you are checking out those movies in German, she is the one singing the songs. I actually got to meet her after her performance. She was extremely nice. That was such a really unique experience to have at Festival of the Arts. For the second year in a row, I met one of my favorite artists who specializes in Disney art, and that is Ashley Taylor. She was also incredibly nice, and I just wanted to thank them for taking the time to talk to people, to make new fans at this festival. It is why this is my favorite Epcot festival of the year. Courtney, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is such a fun festival, and I really hope that we can get back, or I can get back, before it ends.
Now let's welcome from the Great White North, my good friend, the Sarah Enigma.
It's so great to be back. I'm excited to chat today.
So I thought this was an interesting topic because sometimes, especially when I'm talking to Marissa or some of the other guests that we have on the show, we're people who get to go to the parks all the time. So yes, we're spoiled, but also it's fun to talk to somebody who doesn't get to go to the parks as often and see how they deal with that, how they adjust to it, what gets them excited about going back to the parks. So you're somebody who you have not been back to Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando Resort since 2019, and I thought this would be a great way to sort of open that conversation. First of all, the elephant in the room is that the year after you last went, we had a global pandemic. And I know that if people follow you on Instagram, they know that you deal with chronic illness. Has that played a major part in why you haven't been back since 2019?
Oh, totally. A major part. We had already booked the hotel for 2020 to go to Walt Disney World, especially because it's the 50th. And we were very excited to go to see the castle and all the gold and everything like that. So then the pandemic rolled along and we're like, oh, it's fine. It'll last 3 months. And then, as you all know, it didn't last that long. So then we thought maybe 2021, and then it still didn't work. So it has been a huge part for my family, has been the pandemic that has not allowed us to go, because obviously I would have been back there, like I said, every year. So it's still for us, the pandemic ongoing, that we haven't gone yet. And we're hoping that soon we'll be able to go back. But yeah, I can definitely feel the withdrawal from not being able to go back to Disney World. And it's not for a want. It's definitely for physical needs that we haven't been back.
Okay, so a lot has changed definitely since 2019, especially at Walt Disney World. We now have park pass reservations, limits on when you can park hop. There's so much that is different. No Magical Express. A lot of things have disappeared. A lot of things have changed. Do you, as somebody who doesn't go all the time right now, who hasn't been back since 2019, Do you pay attention to all of those changes so that you are ready when it is time to go back?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I watched a little bit less because I'm like, I know it will be different, like when we go back. But now that it's been so consistent, a lot of these changes have stayed. I've definitely been paying attention and being like, oh, okay. Like the biggest thing for me in 2018 and 2019 when we went was the month before was getting up at 5 a.m. to book fast passes for each park for each day. And now there's no fast passes anymore. So I was like, that's a huge planning shift for my family because part of chronic illness is you do have to plan properly for your day. So having fast passes was a great way to be like, okay, here's this at this time so we can do that. So not having fast passes has totally shifted how we thought about how we're going to do the park every day. So that's just one example of how we've been paying attention. And I think the one interesting thing about not being able to go to parks every year is we've had a good chance to think about what we've liked doing and what we haven't liked doing. So you can really sit with it and plan about what we are going to do. Not having the fast passes or for example, you said that limits on when you park hop, and we've decided as a family that that's a little bit too much for us park hopping anyways. So in that case, that doesn't really play into account for us. So I definitely do keep an eye on things, especially character meetings. That's a really big thing for me. I love meeting characters. So when those started to come back into the parks, that's when I really started to pay attention and be like, okay, what is here to stay? And what do I have to plan for my next trip?
On your Instagram channel, you very often show different Disney bounds. Do you try to match your Disney bound with the characters you're trying to meet that day?
Yeah, I think the next time we go, it will be more matching the t-shirts. If I have a Belle t-shirt and I'm meeting Belle that day, I will wear the Belle t-shirt, and that's purely suitcase space for me. 'Cause, I love to bring home souvenirs from the park, so bringing Disney bounds is actually a lot of extra clothes. So to just have shorts and t-shirts is definitely easier. So I match more the t-shirts than the Disney bound, but it's definitely something to think about. Like, what earrings am I going to wear? What pins am I going to wear? What shirts am I going to wear? And that's also great about not park hopping anymore because that was always like, do I change my t-shirt in the car or do I just leave it? So, yeah.
So when you were last there in 2019, had Galaxy's Edge opened at Walt Disney World yet? No, you did
No.
not get to see Galaxy's Edge at all.
No, and Mickey and Minnie's Railway was also not open to my family's chagrin because that is very exciting.
Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway didn't open until the week before everything closed down, or like a week and a half before everything closed. That was incredibly bad timing for that ride. So I think it will be interesting because you, as a big Harry Potter fan, one thing I like to ask for people who see Galaxy's Edge is
Mhm.
how it compares to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, because these are the two best themed lands in the theme park community, in the Orlando theme park community anyway, until Super Nintendo World, and we'll get to that at some point soon. But are you interested to see how the two compare, or are you just such a big Harry Potter fan that you're going to like Harry Potter more no matter what?
I definitely love Harry Potter, and it's so immersive. So it. Oh, I don't know. Like I'll definitely look and I'll definitely see, but Harry Potter, it takes the cake for immersion for me. Yes, that will be definitely really interesting to see, and I definitely am looking forward to riding Rise of the Resistance. I think that will be really interesting and very immersive. Um, and I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I've watched some of them. But from the pictures I've seen, you're totally right. Like the it looks like Star Wars. So I think it will be interesting. When I eventually go, I'll let you know if Harry Potter or Star Wars is better. But I think it will be something definitely worth walking through and trying those rides if it's not like an 8 hour long line or something.
Well, that's always the caveat, I guess. So, now that you have had almost 4 years since you have been to these theme parks, both Disney and Universal, what do you do when you're missing the parks? Are there ways that you kind of deal with wanting to be there but not being able to be there?
Yeah, definitely. I think Disney's in my blood, so not doing anything Disney, I would lose my mind. So there's definitely things that I do. The one that's the most consistent is I do Disney movie nights every week. I do them in chronological order. So we start with Snow White and we go all the way up to whatever the newest release is on Disney Plus. It works because it's you don't always pick your favorite princess movie every week, but you get halfway through and you're like, oh man, I just want to watch Mary Poppins again, or when's Frozen 2 coming up? But it's a fun way. It's every Saturday night. We have pizza or whatever our meal is, and we sit down, we watch a Disney movie. If we're feeling extra special, we watch Disney Fairy Tale Weddings, and then we can comment on, oh, yeah, that's by this place, and oh, let's go there next time because it's pretty. So it's definitely ways to integrate the parks and Disney more. I think that's the most consistent way to make sure that I still get my Disney jolt every week. And other ways, obviously, I listen to your podcast, which is always very fun to see what's going on. And I wear Disney clothes on days I'm feeling sad because it's nice to look in the mirror and see Mickey Mouse smiling back at you. And we kind of play hypothetical questions in my family if we're having a kind of sad day. So it'd be like, it's rainy today. Which park would you be in? And we'd be like, oh, I would be in Epcot because I'd be in the Frozen line and it's 2 hours of no rain, or or stuff like that. Like we haven't explored the resorts a lot, but we'll say, what resort would you want to work at? And we just have questions like that, and it kind of takes us like a half an hour to talk it through and just describe different ways. And we always plan our next trip. Like we have a binder. It is our Disney World binder. And we look at what day would we go to Epcot? What day would we go to Animal Kingdom? Oh, we saw on Instagram that there's this really new cool Simba pretzel. My sister really wants to try those Simba pretzels. So we write that in the binder to make sure that we do that. And I always make sure every trip I write a good journal of what we've done. So if one day I'm like, hey, did we ride Peter Pan in 2019? Then it's easy to flip back and be like, we did. Oh, we wrote it twice. Awesome. Let's do that again next time. So I think it's a lot of memories and talking about memories, but also looking ahead to the next trip. And definitely the hypothetical questions has got us through, just thinking about what we could do if we were there, or if we were there during Flower and Garden, what would we do, and stuff like that.
So you had mentioned that as you look back on these things and you have a long gap, you think about the things that you really do need to do every time you're there, or maybe the things that you didn't like as much and maybe you're just doing them out of a sense of obligation. What are some of the things that you've realized you definitely love doing when you're at the parks? And what are some of them that you think maybe I don't need to do this every time? Like I thought I needed to do it, but maybe I don't. I remember personally for me, our family always rope dropped Jungle Cruise as the first ride we did at Magic Kingdom on our first day of our vacation. And as I grew up as an adult, I hardly ever do Jungle Cruise anymore because, first of all, it's kind of the same thing a little bit. Obviously, your skipper can change a lot of that, but I realized I was just doing Jungle Cruise first out of a sense of, well, that's just how we do it. Mm-hmm. So are there any things like that that you have noticed?
Yeah. Well, definitely rope dropping is something that you definitely have to do. And for me, in Magic Kingdom specifically, I love the opening show. Like it just the sense of anticipation that the park's about to open, and then the fireworks come out and you're counting down, and I usually cry because it's so exciting. So that is definitely something that I always do. And otherwise, last time we were there, we did Haunted Mansion in the dark, like the line in the dark, and we'd never done that before. And it just adds such a sense of like haunted, creepy, going through the line with the graveyard while it's dark. So I think that's something I would like to do again, is to do Haunted Mansion in the dark. That would be something that would be on the top of my list.
You know, that's a good point, because sometimes we talk about rides that are better to ride at night, and there are obvious answers like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. That is a great ride to ride at night. The People Mover in
Mm.
Tomorrowland. Incredible to ride at night. But I do think that one of them that is really good to ride at night is Haunted Mansion. And there's a couple reasons. One of them is that you get that spooky vibe and it creates that atmosphere. But especially during the height of the pandemic, when things were so different, if
Mhm.
you rode Haunted Mansion during the day, you skipped the stretching room scene. So
Oh.
you just kind of walked right through that room and onto the vehicles. And your eyes were not adjusted yet from the light outside to being on the ride. But if you rode it at night, your eyes would adjust. You were ready to see in the dark, if you will. So I think
Mhm.
that can definitely play a big part, especially with Haunted Mansion, even though it is an indoor ride.
Yeah, it was definitely such a different added layer of the ride just doing it at night, and I absolutely loved it. So that would be something I would definitely do again.
So, what are some of the things that you've realized aren't that important to you?
For example, in Hollywood Studios, last time we went to The Little Mermaid. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but the show with the Little Mermaid.
Right.
And what was funny, my mom actually fell asleep. But I think it wasn't the perfect type of like show that I would like. I much rather would do the Indiana Jones stunt show or the Beauty and the Beast musical. So for that one, I found that the wait was okay, but the actual ride wasn't the best. For Magic Kingdom, I would say I absolutely love Winnie the Pooh, but every once in a while there's just such a long line and it's like what, like a 90-second ride, and you're like, is it worth it? And Peter Pan for me, it's a family favorite for my other two family members, and for me I like it, but it's not my favorite. And standing in that line, oh my word. So for me, I would definitely, I think, consider reconsidering without fast passes and everything, because we used to fast pass it because that was the best. I would maybe rope drop Peter Pan or do it at night, just trying to try to change it. And I wouldn't be sad if I didn't do it more than once, because it's a long line for a short ride.
I hardly ever ride Peter Pan anymore. The last time I was on a vacation to Walt Disney World before I moved here to Florida
Mhm.
was in 2018, and we were coming from Arizona. We were here for a week. We didn't ride Peter Pan the entire week we were here. The last time I went out to Disneyland to spend a week, I didn't ride Peter Pan. Whenever you have that limited amount of time, you
Yeah.
really do start to figure out what is important to you.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
last time that I rode Peter Pan was recently at an after hours event because there's such limited capacity that I knew it wasn't going to be all that long to ride Peter Pan. And that's the last time I did it. It's just way too long of a wait. It
Hmm.
is always so popular because it's so iconic, and it's not worth it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just not worth it. And I know a lot of people like jump down my throat when I say that, but maybe it's part of being spoiled for being here all the time and knowing that I will get to ride it again. But that
Hmm.
is a long, long wait. So I definitely agree with you on that answer. What about over at Universal? Because, like we've mentioned, you are a big Harry Potter fan, and I know doing all of the Harry Potter stuff is really important to you. But what are some of the things there that you're like, I have to hit this ride or I have to get this snack? And what are some of the things where you're like, yeah, maybe if I have time, I'll do X, Y, and Z, but I have to get these things accomplished?
Yeah, that one's easy. I definitely have to hit Hayward's motorbike because that may be the best roller coaster I have ever been on. Gosh, it was amazing. So that one would definitely be a rope drop for me, and make sure we hit that one. I really like doing the shops because it feels like you're actually walking through Hogsmeade or around Hogwarts. So I have to do Ollivanders because that's it's. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but it's super fun. And then what I found interesting last time when we were there is that I found a lot of the other rides quite rough on me. And I was quite sick when we went that time. Like, I'm always sick, but in that case, I was like quite sick. So I found that the Forbidden Journey, the way I was strapped in, it didn't hold me very tight. So I rattled around a lot, and I actually bruised. So that one I wouldn't go go back to again if unless I was feeling a lot better. So that one would be one I went. And actually, the Flight of the Hippogriff, it's fun, but you slide a lot. So I kept running into my sister, and she kept running into me. So that one I think is a nice one. You can just walk past and bow to the hippogriff while you walk past, and you don't need to go on the roller coaster. But for the rest, I enjoyed the frog choir. I enjoy the shops. And if I could do Hagrid's motorbike, if I could just, get back in line and do it again, and then, oh, maybe once more, that would be my day.
Universal definitely has a lot of screens. I know people complain about that sometimes, and I don't really mind it because I think a lot of their screen rides are really good. I think Spider-Man is one of my favorite rides in all of Orlando theme parkdom. But definitely I could see that if I had particular issues, I could definitely see it making me not feel well all day long. The thing I like about Flight of the Hippogriff is that when you get to that very top of the hill, even though it's not a big hill, you can see both parks just completely, and you get this great view of everything. But it's not like one of the other roller coasters that's going really fast where you don't get to appreciate it. You just go up so slowly, and then you get to see everything, and it's a very short ride. I wouldn't ride it if it was more than a 10-minute wait, but I do enjoy that aspect of the ride.
Yeah, I think that was the moment where Hogwarts took my breath away on the Flight of the Hippogriff, because you just the craft and the art to make Hogwarts, like, it just blew my mind. So I'm totally with you. If you want the scenery, that is the ride to go on.
So as you start to plan your next trip, like when you all decide that you're going to go down again, what is your process as a family? How do you go about planning that trip? How far in advance do you usually start? What is it like to get ready for that trip?
How far in advance? Well, probably the answer is as far as we can. um, we tend to do a year because usually we're in Disney World and then we go, let's do this again next year. We get home and we start planning the next one. So, yeah, probably a year. We usually start by looking at dates. My sister works for the university, so we usually go on the University of Calgary's reading week. So that's in November, and we love Christmas. So it's great because we get to do Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party as well. So that's when we tend to plan it. So it's usually an easy, like, November, done. So for that, the dates are easy. We usually book our hotel because you can cancel that. And then we're like, good, we have a place to stay, and now we can start thinking about it. So we usually plan on, and we start by saying, how many days in the park do we want to be in? Because that's usually the first question you have to ask.
Can I break in for a second and ask, does the fact that you are dealing with chronic illness and you don't know if you might be feeling really sick when you're down there, does that affect how many days you do stay in the parks? Do you try to schedule a lot of breaks in there for that reason?
Totally, yeah. So the first thing we look at is how many days that we're going to stay, and then how many days in the park. And then we're like, okay, realistically, now how many days do we need for rest days? How many days do we need for half days? How many days do we need for groceries? Because I have specialized diets, so we have to stay in a hotel that has a kitchen. So it is definitely a huge consideration of chronic illness to be like, okay, yeah, ideally we're going for 11 days and we want 11 days in the park. That's not going to work. So we usually schedule in at least one rest day a week, and it's probably about halfway through the week, just so that we can just rejuvenate and refresh. And that's usually just a sleep-in day, stay in the hotel all day, maybe go to Disney Springs to go to World of Disney, or my favorite bakery is Erin McKenna because it's if you don't know it, it's allergy free. Like it's gluten free, soy free, dairy free. I'm sure I'm missing one. It's not technically nut free, but it is. But they use coconuts, so
Everything is also vegan.
yes,
So if you are a vegetarian, like I am a vegetarian, I can't have anything in Amaret's. Like I can hardly have any of their desserts because everything has gelatin in it, which is an animal-based product.
yeah,
So Aaron McKenna is definitely one of my absolute favorite places on property. I always try to get their special holiday, whatever the holiday is at that time of year. I try to get their special items. So I was glad to hear you say that. Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt, but keep
No, no,
going.
no. No, Aaron McKenna, that is honestly the first stop. We do groceries and then we go to Aaron McKenna and I just buy treats for the week. And then our next rest days usually go back to Aaron McKenna and buy treats for the week because it's really fun to have treats, right? And in the parks, it's sometimes hard. I can have sorbet, which is great, but it's nice to have a cookie or something, right? So, yeah, so going back to scheduling, you definitely have to schedule rest days. The nice thing about Disney World is that there is a magic to it, right? So for me, it's healing and to have joy and happiness. So I don't tend to feel too rough when we're there. And I think adrenaline is a huge part of it. So I usually do okay, but making sure we have those rest days. Or when we go to the Very Merry Christmas party, we don't do anything beforehand. Like we just make sure it's very low key day because it's late in the evening and a lot of people with chronic illness evenings are the worst. So having a slow morning in the beginning is very important. So yeah, you're right, we do have to consider it, and that is the first consideration, is how many rest days and how many park days.
Do you find yourself being able to do full park days? I know you mentioned earlier that park hopping, you've just decided that isn't worth it for you.
Mhm.
That with everything that you have to think about with your planning, it's not worth it to try to jump on a bus, make it to the next park, then make it back if your car is parked somewhere that you're not prepared. And I know that can be a huge hassle, but do you find that if you stay in the same park, you can make it work for most of the day?
Yeah, yeah. I find for the other three parks that aren't Magic Kingdom, I tend to be able to go to about 5 p.m. because we rope drop. So 5 p.m. is probably enough time. And then at that point, I'm pretty tired. So go back and have dinner in the room and then have a nice sleep, and then I'm okay. So that's the other reason, is that I love Magic Kingdom fireworks. They are one of my things that take my breath away, and they're amazing. So we also have to plan Magic Kingdom not back to back, because if you rope drop and then do fireworks, it's a long day. But it's worth it. So if I plan Magic Kingdom, like if I do say Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, Epcot rest day, then I can do a full day in Magic Kingdom and be able to make it to the fireworks. But if you do back to back Magic Kingdom days, it's a bit much. So yeah, I think it depends. It's deciding which night shows you want to go see. So for me, Magic Kingdom fireworks are my favorite. They're worth for me to staying. The show at or Phantasmic in Hollywood Studios, sorry, not my favorite. So it's not worth it for me to stay the whole
You
evening.
and Marissa are going to have words
I
someday.
know.
She loves that show.
Yeah, so I guess to answer your question, it kind of you have to decide what's worth it to you, because you just know you can't do it all. So you just have to decide it. And for me, Magic Kingdom's my favorite park, so I make it worth it.
The Sarah Enigma will be back next week to continue talking about this topic, and we may stray and cover some other topics as well. Please make sure to follow Sarah on Instagram at the Sarah Enigma. Of course, I don't want anybody to get confused with my regular co-host, Sarah Says, who has needed to take a few weeks off to handle a lot of early year stuff with her family. I assure you she will be back on the show next month. Find That Sarah on Twitter at Sarah Says 84. Meanwhile, I can be found on Twitter at Rick_Ear, on Instagram at Rick Dougherty TGTT. Dougherty is spelled DOUGHERTY, and on TikTok at Tall Guy Talks Travel. Marissa from Chicago is on Twitter at Think Mickey blog. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. We are going to be much more active on social media this year because we have big plans. You could help us out just by being a part of the conversation. The Sarah Enigma returns next Thursday on the podcast. Until then, have a great week.